For 15 years, I was the Vance family's favorite charity case, the dirty, pathetic sister everyone pitied. Until I walked into a family dinner with a $45 million secret burning a hole in my pocket, and watched my golden child sister's perfect, fraudulent life burn to the ground. My name is Harper, and for most of my adult life, I was the undisputed black sheep. While my older sister Chloe married a corporate VP named Trent and moved into a gated Mac mansion in the suburbs, I bought 30 acres of barren, industrial wasteland out in West Texas. I drove a battered Ford F-150 that rattled like a tin can, and I lived in a rotation of oil-stained Carhartt jackets. To Chloe, my existence wasn't just a failure, it was a PR opportunity. I still remember the holiday party where she perfected her routine. Her living room was packed with Trent's wealthy colleagues. I stood in the corner, nursing a cheap beer, hyper-aware of the engine grease permanently lodged beneath my fingernails. Chloe glided over, in pristine white cashmere, her signature narcissistic smirk, perfectly disguised as a sympathetic pout. "Harper, sweetie," she cooed loudly. Ensuring the chatter around us died down, she reached into her Prada bag, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and pressed it into my palm like I was a stray dog. "Please, take this. Get yourself a hot meal tonight, okay? Trent and I are just so worried about you." The room collectively awed at her selflessness. I stood there, gripping the paper until my knuckles turned white, swallowing pure bile. They saw a saint, saving her destitute sister. I saw a predator, laying the groundwork for a decade of absolute psychological abuse. Gaslighting wasn't just a tactic for Chloe, it was her native language. For a decade, she curated a masterpiece of manipulation. Using me as the canvas, every Thanksgiving played out like a rehearsed psychological thriller. The dining room would smell like roasted turkey and expensive sage, but the air was always suffocatingly thick. My father would sit at the head of the mahogany table, carving the meat with aggressive, sharp slices. 32 years old, and playing in the dirt. He'd mutter, pointing the carving knife in my general direction without actually making eye contact. Threw away a perfectly good accounting degree. Some people just refuse to learn. My mother would sigh heavily, shooting me a look of profound, visceral disappointment. And right on cue, the golden child would swoop in to play the martyr. Chloe would reach across the table, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the chandelier light, and place a perfectly manicured hand over Mom's. "Don't be harsh, Mom. We just need to be patient with her," Chloe would say, dabbing the corner of her dry eye with a linen napkin. "Trent and I are happy to help cover her winter heating bill again. It's fine. It just means we'll have to downsize our Aspen trip this year." The absolute audacity of it shook me to the core. I never asked them for a dime. My heating bill was paid by my own sweat, fixing up rusted generators and hauling scrap metal. But Chloe delivered her lines with such practiced, trembling sincerity that my parents swallowed it whole. They didn't see her ulterior motives. They didn't question how a woman, supposedly bleeding money to keep her destitute sister off the streets, was simultaneously upgrading to a customized Range Rover and posting Instagram stories from VIP lounges in Dubai. Chloe had built a twisted narrative where my supposed failures justified her luxury. Behind closed doors, she was siphoning dry an emergency family trust. A trust my parents had set up years ago, a fund she volunteered to manage. Because I was clearly too financially incompetent to handle it, I sat there in my frayed flannel, grinding my teeth so hard my jaw ached, enduring the pitying stares. The injustice was a physical weight in my chest. Why didn't I scream? Why didn't I expose her right then? Because, in a family brainwashed by a narcissist, defending yourself just makes you look crazy. So, I swallowed the humiliation. I let them think I was a pathetic loser. I drove my rattling truck back to my bleak, dusty 30 acres, fired up my halogen floodlights, and worked until my muscles screamed. I poured every ounce of that toxic rage into the soil. I didn't know it then. But while Chloe was busy building a fragile house of cards out of stolen money, I was literally standing on a goldmine. 2 years ago, the pathetic narrative they wrote for me finally cracked. It started with a fleet of black Escalades rolling up to my rusted chain-link gate. Men in pristine Armani suits and Italian leather loafers stepped out, immediately sinking into ankle-deep Texas mud. They looked at me like I was a stubborn weed they needed to pull, but they were the ones trespassing on my turf. My worthless dirt wasn't worthless at all. It sat directly over an unmapped, massive lithium deposit. More importantly, my property was the exact geographical choke point. A choke point, a ruthless Silicon Valley conglomerate, desperately needed. They needed it to build their new battery gigafactory. Without my 30 acres, their billion-dollar project was dead in the water. They tried to play me. They threw out lowball offers, using corporate buzzwords, assuming the dirty girl in the patched jacket would jump at a couple $100,000. I didn't flinch. I sat on the tailgate of my truck, sipping black coffee from a chipped thermos, and let them sweat in the blistering heat. I hired a cutthroat land attorney who knew exactly how to bleed billionaires dry. When the bidding war finally ended, the ink dried on a number that felt hallucinatory: $45 million. I will never forget the day the wire transfer cleared. I was parked outside the local credit union. The truck's busted AC was blowing hot, stale air into my face. But I barely felt it. I stared at the banking app on my cracked phone screen. Available balance: $45 million. $4.12. I didn't cheer. I didn't pop champagne. I gripped the cracked vinyl steering wheel, buried my face in my arms, and sobbed until my ribs ached. It was a visceral, violent release. Not for the money, but for the sheer, untouchable freedom. For the first time in my life, I had built something monumental, and no one could ever brand me a fifi again. But I didn't tell a soul. I didn't upgrade my life. I kept driving the rattling Ford. I kept wearing the oil-stained clothes. The millions sitting in my account became my invisible armor. I knew Chloe's house of cards was built on a foundation of stolen money and narcissistic deceit. And gravity always wins. I was waiting for the inevitable collapse. And when the shockwave finally hit, I wanted to be perfectly camouflaged, hidden right in the very poverty she mocked. The call came on a Tuesday evening. My mother's voice didn't have its usual patronizing lilt. It was raw, breathless, and bordering on hysterical. "Just get here, please." When I walked through my parents' front door, in my steel-toed boots, the suffocating tension hit me like a physical wall. There was no roasted turkey this time. My mother sat slumped on the sofa, her face buried in her hands, weeping uncontrollably. My father looked hollowed out, as if he had aged 10 years in a single afternoon. But the real show was in the dining room. Trent stood at the head of the table. His tie loosened, a vein pulsing dangerously in his neck. Splayed out across the polished mahogany were dozens of bank statements, heavily marked with angry red highlighter. Chloe was backed into the corner, her usually flawless complexion completely drained of color, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped rat. "Tell her." Trent barked, his voice dangerously low. "Tell your sister what you did." Silence. The kind of silence that rings in your ears. Trent snatched a stack of papers and slammed them down in front of me. I was compiling our records for an IRS audit. I found a hidden checking account. Your parents' family trust. The one Chloe volunteered to manage. The Harper Emergency Fund. He let out a harsh, humorless laugh. She drained it, Harper. Over $700,000 in 10 years. My father finally looked up, his jaw trembling. "She told us you were drowning. That the county was seizing your land. We authorized every single transfer, because we thought we were keeping a roof over your head." The Aspen ski trips. Trent spat, taking a step toward Chloe, who shrank back against the wall. The custom interior for the Range Rover. The down payment on my boat. All of it. Stolen from your parents, under the guise of saving you. My mother looked at me, her eyes bloodshot and pleading. Harper, did you ever see a single cent? I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood perfectly still, letting the sheer weight of my sister's depravity settle over the room. I haven't taken a dime from any of you since I was 18, I said, my voice ice cold. Panic hijacked Chloe's face. The golden child mask shattered, revealing the desperate narcissist beneath. She lunged forward, her acrylic nails digging into the table. I was protecting the money, she shrieked, instantly defaulting to her favorite weapon, gaslighting. You're a mess, Harper. You live in a literal junkyard. If I gave you that cash, you would have blown it. I was investing it in our assets. You bought a Birkin bag with your parents' retirement fund, you sick sociopath. Trent growled, his disgust palpable. Chloe ignored him, turning her manic, tear-filled eyes on me. Harper, please. Tell them. Tell them how broke you are. Tell them you're drowning in debt. You need me. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just reached into the inner pocket of my grease-stained Carhartt jacket. I pulled out a single, neatly folded piece of paper, the official bank confirmation of the wire transfer, and tossed it onto the pile of highlighted statements. You sold my dignity for a kitchen remodel and a boat, Chloe, I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the dining room like a razor. Trent picked up the paper. His eyes widened, scanning the heavy black ink. $45 million. He choked out, the color draining from his face. I just sold my dirt. To a tech conglomerate, I said, looking dead into my sister's horrified, trembling eyes. Keep the leftover change from the trust fund, Chloe. You're going to need it for the divorce lawyers. I didn't wait for the apologies. I didn't stay to watch my parents beg for forgiveness or to see Chloe collapse into a puddle of actual, unscripted tears. As Trent grabbed his coat and walked out the door, I turned my back on all of them and walked out into the cool Texas night. I climbed into my rattling Ford F-150, turned the key, and let the engine roar. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. There was nothing left back there but ghosts and karma. If this story of absolute, mic drop karma satisfied your soul, hit that subscribe button. What would you do? Would you have left your toxic family in the dust, or tried to fix the damage? Let me know in the comments below.